Oh, Jason, can we get that stool right there? So that's if you want to give by text, you can give by text with the 832 number. And if you have a check or cash, these guys will be happy to take your money. We'd like you to do that. And Trista, you can come on up too. So you're going to get a triple whammy this morning. Should we get another mic or use one of those, or what should we do? Since it's three of us. You tell me, Xavier. He said 1 second. Oh, I got to get my notes.
Lord, we bless everyone that gives today, and we thank you for the goodness that you've provided to us, that we can give back to you. We do so with a willing heart, and there's no need to feel like you have to have what we don't have. We give to you, and we thank you for all you've provided for us.
You want to go ahead and do what you have for Belinda?
We're all standing with Belinda, and this morning I heard this over her. And this type of intimacy is available to everyone. It's just humbling to hear this kind of passion. And I really thought it was neat, all this about beautiful this morning, because Belinda means beautiful. My Belinda, my belle, my beloved, my beauty, mine. I am yours and you are mine. We are inseparable. There is no existence where we are not together. You are in me and I am in you. My thoughts are your thoughts. Your thoughts are my thoughts. Hand in hand, we created, we create, and we will continue to create. Your very breath draws me in and releases me. Life. The very beating of your heart is involuntary by science. A spiritual truth that love and life are constant. Proof that you can hear me, feel me, and that I am never away from you. I have never missed one beat of your heart. I know the number of hairs on your head, the number of tears, the thoughts, the number of beats of your heart. I dance to every one. Your life is the music of my joy. Nothing about you is insignificant. No one compares to you, my belle. You are my favorite. You are my focus. You are my love. No words in the universe can fully explain my deep love for my precious galaxy of perfection that mere humans see as Belle. The symphony that you are can't be seen by the eyes of man. You must see through my eyes, hear through my ears, speak my words, fully enter into our secret place, engulfed in each other, lost in unimaginable love, drowning in each other. Come away with me. I deny you nothing. I couldn't. We agreed to always do this together. Hand in hand, heart to heart, eye to eye, face to face. Breathe me in and shake the earth.
Grab another chair. And Karina, would you grab one of those waters? So today, you guys, you get the three of us. We're going to do something here together. And we're excited about it. So one of the scriptures that I got for what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk about attachments, and we're going to talk about pain in the body and what it does to us and how it works in our mind and how it works in our body. And we're going to talk about trauma, a little bit of trauma, and we'll see where we go. We're going to start there. So Psalms 139:5 says that you've gone into my future to prepare the way, and in kindness you follow behind me to spare me from the harm of my past. You have laid your hand on me. This is from the Passion Translation. And I love this Psalms because it's saying that you have gone into my future to prepare the way, and in kindness you follow behind me to spare me from the harm of my past. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Some of the harms of our past, how we have held on to things that God is saying to let go of those things because they're hindering us from moving into the fullness of what God has for us. Amen? So you want to start it off, Karina? Okay.
And I just want to say to start off, God speaks to us all differently, and we're all totally different people with different stories, with different tendencies and cycles. And so I just want to say that, we might not be speaking to everyone, but we're speaking to those. If it resonates with you, maybe this is what God is sharing. So we're just sharing our story, and it might resonate and it might not, and that's okay. And so I wanted to share a little bit about, before I share part of the story, a little bit about myself and what I know about me. And my tendency, and it's kind of in my family, we have a tendency to be overly positive, to just sort of dismiss things that might be uncomfortable, because we don't like being uncomfortable. I don't like being uncomfortable. I tend to avoid it. So, I'll deny it, I'll pretend like it doesn't exist, but it's out of the fear of being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking to those who have that. Now, some of you might love it. I'm not talking to you, because yours is a different process than mine. Yours might be, okay, it's time to let go of that. Yeah, we've been there over and over. It's time to let go and move on. But mine was, it's time to look at things that you've been trying to avoid most of your life, It's time to really look at those things and see yourself for who you thought you were, to be able to let that go and now see yourself for who you actually are. Yeah. So it's learning to embrace it all and not, I kind of wondered at first when we first started talking about resistance, but the resistance is within. It's not from anyone else, Right. At first when I was like, oh yeah, I resist that. No, that's again my avoidance of not wanting to be uncomfortable. Yeah. And so it's learning to, okay, that is what I'm resisting. So now I need to face that. So, oh, thank you. So I just kind of wanted to, this is how I see the mind, the conscious mind, our thoughts, and then the subconscious, which we're usually not fully aware of. So here's the... Oh. Okay. Sorry. Okay, here's the conscious mind. It's above the surface. Oh, really? Okay. Well, I'll just put this line here. So here's this line. This is, up here are your conscious thoughts. These are the things that you're fully aware of. Oh, thanks, Monica. So this is your conscious, these are your conscious thoughts. What you are fully aware of. And below this line is your subconscious. So these are the things that are below the surface of your awake thoughts, but they're still running your life. Yeah. They're there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I kind of see it like a computer. I'm starting to view it sort of like a computer. The subconscious, this is the program you're running on. Yeah. Now, when it comes into your conscious, then you are actively feeding that program or not. But when it's below the surface, it's still there, but you don't realize you're running on this program.
Right.
And it's just like a computer program. And what causes it to run more? It's being what you're feeding it.
That's it.
It runs on energy. And so a couple weeks ago, I had, there have been some things in my family and just things with someone I love who, they're things that they weren't maybe in a good place, and because of that, I wasn't in a good place. And that for a couple days, I was just really kind of in turmoil about it and upset. And I came home from work one day, and I told Peter, sharing some thoughts with him that I've been feeling, and I hadn't confessed yet. And he said, there's a real unhealthy attachment there. And I think you should just spend the next couple days asking God, what's it about, and what to do with it. So that evening, I went, and I just want to say, sometimes we love our families, and we love the people in our life, our loved ones, but if someone else's, maybe their life not being in a good place is causing you to not be in a good place, that's not right. That's unhealthy. We are part of one another, part of each other, and we're all one in Him. But someone else's story, if I'm so attached to that, and it means them being okay is the only way I'll be okay, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
That's the lie.
Yeah.
And so that night, I just was quiet before the Lord, and I wrote out all these questions. Why do I feel this? Why do I, all this stuff? And I felt like He just said, go to sleep, you'll get your answers. And so I went to sleep, and I woke up. I had a dream, which really wasn't about anything. I woke up and then entered into this conversation with this person, and it was a very emotional conversation, and I started to cry, and I just started bawling, and it was so deep. And I felt like God was showing me, He just kept saying, just let it out, like the depth of the pain was so deep I didn't even realize it. And so I just kept crying, and He showed me this goes back to your childhood, even back to when you were a baby. And He showed me things that I would never have known, no one in my family would know, even about like my grandparents and certain things within my family. And after I just was crying and releasing all that, and He just felt so like an old pain, just letting it all out and all go. Then He started telling me some of the lies that I've been believing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we tend to do is, because in some way or other, we're all afraid of pain, to some extent. Now, sometimes you get used to it and it becomes like, but as a child, when you experience pain, you internalize it. And so, as a child, especially a baby, if you think about like, before you can even really communicate and have that interaction, children have no walls. You are literally just absorbing everything from the atmosphere around you. And like David said, everything has a frequency. So even people, even if they're not saying things, but thinking it, or it's just part of what they're giving off, the child is absorbing all of that. And it's being just, it's becoming part of at that point, they don't know how to deal with it. And so it becomes part of them. So in families, you'll see this a lot, or in groups or whatever. Because it's it's for our self-protection.
Yeah.
We all develop coping mechanisms and ways to cope. And a lot of times we look for things in order to cope. We can look to people
Yep.
to help us. We can look to some of the more obvious things. You can, most of society can see, okay, drugs, alcohol, sex, food, TV. You can zone out because the programs, you had a rough day. Oh, I just need to zone out, so put this show on where I can detach, where you can entertainment, Trista was saying work.
Yeah.
You can look to work to numb you. All these things are meant to numb the pain, or we can use all these things to numb the pain. And in my family, one of the big things has been food. And you might not think that by looking at me, but I've had the same voice in my head most of my life that many people in my family have probably had. And it's been, I've had to, food for me has been my way of comforting myself, of eating my emotions, of numbing the pain. And at times the Lord has shown me the subconscious programming under it. And I've heard the subconscious come up, and I've heard things that I've said to myself, but subconsciously, like, go feed the fat girl. I heard that one time, and I was like, whoa. And, and then that morning when I had that, all that emotion come out, I heard the Lord say, you overeat to protect yourself from intimacy.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I realized, wow, okay, yeah, it's exactly one of those. Mm-hmm. And, it's for the fear of being vulnerable. It's the fear of feeling uncomfortable. I don't like that. Of being, just out there and not having, that's a security blanket around me.
Yeah.
And so for most of my life, that's kind of been my security blanket, the way I hide. And when I heard that, it was the most freeing thing. And it was partly at that point because the emotion, all the pain had come out, and then I could hear what was under all that pain, and hear the illusion of it, and just the vapor of that lie. And this is where I wanted to just speak a little bit too about, we all deal with stress in different ways. Some people, anger kind of comes out more, and we all have these three things, but some tend to experience it more than others. Anger, fear, or shame. And for me, a big part of most of my life, until a few years ago, and I started seeing it and just coming out of hiding, was shame. And so, I wanted to hide these things, and even just saying this now, but it's actually now freeing, because the more you realize that we all have had our ways to cope because we needed it, and the more you realize there's no shame in whatever we've believed. It's just the program.
Yeah.
There's no power to it. It's just a meaningless program.
Yeah.
It's the false lie.
Yeah.
So really where the power is in realizing, that's all it was. So now it's like, it was the training wheels I needed to protect myself. You think about a child, because a child's bones and their structure is so tender still. If they didn't have training wheels and they just got on a bike, started riding it, and crashed, they could do serious damage to their body. The training wheels are there to protect them. But now there's a point in our journey with God, and there will be more points maybe, and more, it's not, and that's where God's like breaking my own view of how I've seen things in this linear fashion. It's not linear. It's actually, like, who cares? One of the things that, who cares if I still have to, so this is one of the things that when Peter said that, I thought, Lord, I thought I had dealt with codependency years ago.
Yeah.
I thought I'd dealt with these issues before, but just like David said, it is for freedom that he has set us free. So do not be chained again to a yoke of slavery.
Yeah.
So when he shows you the yoke, and for me, this was the yoke. Why would I want to pretend like it doesn't exist to avoid it and be walking around chained. You know, there's freedom in realizing, oh, that chain is still there. Okay, well, I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
The training wheels can come off now, you know, and it's time to start riding my bike. And if I crash, it's okay. You know, it's not going to, it'll hurt, but it'll heal. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was just something recently that I realized. And then from that place, I actually had so much more compassion and understanding for my loved ones. And in that place, I've had some amazing conversations, actually, just last weekend. Really powerful conversation from a place of non-judgment, because I realized, oh, we've all kind of, you know, felt like this. And I had this beautiful conversation with this loved one of mine and shared all this because it's a part of our story together as a family. And I realized, and then when this person was sharing back, I realized, wow, it was so amazing just to hear what this person was saying back to me, because I realized my whole life I've been looking at them through this veil.
Yeah. Wow.
And I finally got to see the real person, because I was able to see myself and have compassion for myself, and realizing, oh yeah, that was just a lie you believe. That's okay, you can let it go. And in that place of compassion, I then was able to let go of the judgments I had against this person. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have judged you my whole life. I can't believe it. I haven't seen who you really are. And now I see, dang, you're amazing.
Yeah.
And whether this person's life changes or not, that's okay. I see who that person really is, and it's amazing. And so I just wanted you to, one of the things I wanted to share too was when Jesus said, when his mother and brothers came to see him, and he said, who are my mother and brothers? You all are my mother and brothers. And it wasn't because he was denying his family. It was because he was so attuned to being, of course, fully God, but his whole mission on earth was to become fully man, fully humanity, so that he could overcome and be fully God for us now in us. And it was in that place where he was like, because there was no attachment, in an unhealthy way, attachment to his family. Everyone was his family.
Yeah.
And he understood the union with all and could see everyone for who they really are and have compassion. And in that place, he could experience all of humanity and the beauty of it and not judge it and be able to freely give and release to all of it from that place. And so that's kind of what, that I experienced recently. And one other thing I wanted to share, just another quick story, is sometimes God will show you the why, but not always. So this was, and some of you know, Peter and I have shared our story, but before we started dating, a couple of years before that, somebody had said to me, there is, I got a prophetic word about this friend of mine, and who I was, in ministry together with. This is your Isaac, and told that person, this is your Rebecca. My first name is Rebecca. And so it was like, oh, this is a prophetic word. So I thought this was it. And I'll tell you, for me, since, we've all had little heartbreak. I had heartbreak at early age, puppy love in kindergarten. And what that did to me at that time, from then and a couple other times of being disappointed that nothing happened with someone who I really liked, I started believing a rejection took root in my heart. And so I just started avoiding relationships or the potential of it, even though I wanted it so much, because of the fear of rejection.
Right.
And so my way to protect myself was to avoid it, was to really not be vulnerable with anyone. And so, yeah, I couldn't have the opportunity for them to reject me. So before Peter and I dated, I had had 2 boyfriends my entire life. The first one was 3 weeks long, and maybe dated, I could count on my hands the amount I dated. And I was 41 when we started dating. And so a couple years before, I thought, this is it, this is God's person for me, this is my Isaac, blah, blah, blah. And he told me that he got this word too, and he wanted to pursue me towards marriage. And so we dated for a week. And a week later, he came back and said, this can't be God because I don't have peace. Shouldn't there be peace? So we broke up. And I was devastated because I thought this was God and what happened. And I was so disappointed, and there had been so much pain attached to it that before Peter and I started dating, it was a couple months before that, I heard the Lord say, I need to take you back in order to move you forward.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I went out to Reading for a conference, and went to Bethel, out to Reading for a conference. And me and that guy had gone to a conference there, like I think 2 years before or a year prior. And we had gone on this drive from Reading down to Eureka, which is through the mountains, and it takes like 2 hours or 2.5 hours to get down there. And it was such a fun drive. And so when I went there that weekend, when God told me, I'm going to take you back in order to move you forward, I went for this children's conference at Bethel. And it was an amazing weekend. I went by myself, and just everywhere, God was like all these signs of just him loving me, and even during worship, I just saw the Trinity, like all 3 of them just, when I was born, the day that I was born, holding me and saying like, we have loved you from the start. And just, he was just loving me, and I have a nickname in my family. And when I walked out after that worship service, I walked out, and there was a car with a license plate, and that license plate was a personalized license plate that was my nickname. And I was like, oh, and so just all these sweet things. Then Sunday morning, I go to church, and the first thing he said was, in the start of his sermon, is, God will not tear down your wall. He said, like, he won't go into places where he's not welcome. Like, he's waiting for you to open yourself to him. He won't force himself in. And as I'm hearing that, all this pain starts to well up. And I was like, I know I'm going to lose it in here if I don't get out of here. So I got in my car, and I just felt like he was like, start driving, go on that drive. So I start on that drive, and I'm just bawling and bawling and bawling. And I'm crying so hard that I can barely see. And it's like a windy mountain road. And I'm just crying so hard, and I felt like, don't you even care? See, I might get in a car accident, and you don't care. And I felt like he was like, and I'm like, just crying and screaming. And all of a sudden I had this vision of like, almost like a little animal, like an abused little puppy. Anyone sees like this abused little animal, what's the first thing you're going to do is surround him and try and protect him, And I felt like, I saw that, and it felt like he was like, don't worry, you're surrounded, you're protected, just keep going. And then also I was like, it's going to be dark on my drive back home because, it's like a 4-hour drive round trip or something. And, I'm going to be driving through these windy roads, and there's no light, and, and I just felt like, keep going, keep going. So as I'm driving on this road, I'm just bawling, letting it all out. And I'm like, God, don't you see my tender heart? And I'm just crying. And it's just all coming out. And by the time I got to Eureka, and it was like a long, windy road, by the time I got to Eureka is just a flat, it's by the sea. And it's just like you get down to sea level and it's just flat and open. And it was like all spent. You know, all my emotion at that point was spent. And I just felt peace and just felt like, okay, the peace. And I didn't really hear much. I just felt his love. But I felt almost like I was going through the caverns of my heart on that drive, down to the depth, and just letting all the emotion out. Then I came back and just felt peace. I even stopped on the side of the road along this little creek. And by the time I got back to Redding, as soon as I got off that road onto the freeway, that's when the sun started to set and it started getting dark. And I was like, wow. And then and it was, I think, literally 3 months later when Peter tried to ask me out, and you heard that story. Yeah.
He says she turned me down.
And then a month later when God literally supernaturally opened my heart to him. And the amazing thing is, and this is the tenderness and the love of our God, is on our second date. And so, you know, again, I've been waiting so long, I really didn't know much about relationships. And so I needed to know this was God. And so I think that's why he made it to me happen in such a supernatural way. And on our second date, we're sitting on his couch, and he puts his arm around me, and he says, "My tender-hearted woman." And that's how I knew, it was just our second date. He didn't really know me fully that well at that time. But I said to God, "God, do you see my tender heart? Will anyone see my tender heart?"
Yeah.
And so I knew. And so, sorry, I didn't realize. I get so emotional. But sometimes we don't know that program and the pain attached to it is still there.
Yeah.
And it's blocking things from us experiencing
That's right.
the very things that we've been promised and the very things that we've been dreaming about. Because the frequency, that energy is still there trapped, and it's preventing us from experiencing the fullness of it. And then this is just the last part of it. So I understood the why when it came to my family. But the next day when it was time for me to leave Redding, I went to one of the Lake Shasta, one of the lakes there. And it was so dry. They had had such a horrible drought that year, unfortunately, like many. And the lake that I'd seen 2 years before was practically dried out. And I felt like God saying, I was just marveling at that. And I was standing there by the lake, and what came to me was Deuteronomy, and all of a sudden I forgot, is it 3, 2 and 3, where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not into your own understanding. There are some things we will never understand, and I felt like the Lord telling me, you just need to let it go.
Yeah.
Drop it there in this lake. You don't need to know. Just, you're not taking that back with you when you come home. And I didn't. And so, what I needed to release was the emotion.
Yep.
And then let go of the needing to know what happened and the why. And so, if I'd still held on to that and needed to know the why, at that point, I would have consciously blocked Peter and what God wanted. So there are times when he'll show you the why, and there are times you won't know. But that's okay. It's just our ego, our mind that wants to know, wants to feed off of it. So that's all I just.
I like how you use physical words like block or let go, or, I don't think we realize the physical aspect that all these emotions and thoughts actually do on our body.
Yeah.
Because we hold on to them. They're stuck. We're blocked. We need to release them. All of this stuff. And I think each one of those has an impact on our frequency. So playing the bowls on the body, I'll hear people's frequencies in the bowls. And some of them you hit them and it's a thud. You're like, I have no idea what's in there, but it's in there. It's the same as grabbing a bowl and it just stops. So it is very significant what we hold on to, what we release. So, when we do sessions like that, thoughts come, or when you do meditation, thoughts come and you release. Thoughts come and you release. You're not judging them. You're not judging yourself. You're not holding on to them.
Right.
You're just letting things flow through you and opening yourself up to the frequency that is God, and continuing to let your body go through that process, and being free to just let God flow, let the frequency flow, let all of that just be released.
Yeah.
And it's just so important.
I like what Karina said when she talked about the subconscious being the computer of your thing. Jim Quick says that our brains are like a supercomputer and our self-talk runs it. Our self-talk runs the supercomputer of our brain. And so many times things come up in our lives and we're talking it and we're upset about it and we keep the self-talk going and going and going, that we have programmed ourselves to live in the past. And we programmed ourselves not to move forward. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's the self-talk that keeps going and going and going and going in that area. And so I want to talk to you a little bit today. I think I showed you guys a video a long time ago about Houdini. And in this particular video, Houdini was challenged with breaking out of prison. And in the video, he said, give me 1 hour and I'll break out, just let me in with my street clothes. And when he got into the prison, he took off his belt, because in his belt he had a pick that he was going to unlock the lock with. And he worked 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 and he worked, and 2 hours had passed by. And by the time the 2 hours that came, he was sweating, and he leaned against the door and the door opened. The door was opened the whole time. There's things that are open in our lives for the whole time, but see, he was really imprisoned by his brain. He was imprisoned by his thoughts. He was imprisoned by what he thought he knew. And a lot of times, guys, these things, these pains that are in our bodies and these traumas, they shape who we are, and that's all that we know. And we begin to see through it. That's our filters that we see through. That's the way we see others. That's the way we see ourselves. Sometimes that's the way we see God. And so the prison is in the mind because of self-perseverance, because of the pain that happened. Guys, I told you guys this before. It's going to happen in your life. The it's are going to come. What are you going to do with the it's? What are you going to do with the trauma? What are you going to do with the pain? And it is important, the pain and the trauma is important, but it's also what you think about it and what you think about God in the midst of that. Because a lot of times there's a lie that we're believing when it happens. That God's not good. She could have said, God's not good. You're not thinking of me. Don't you see my tender heart? You let me go through this. You let these people prophesy to me. You let this not happen to me. Where are you? And so many times things like that happen in our childhood, and it shapes who we are, and we decide God's not good. Or we decide I'm rejected. Or we go into fear. Or all of that is the thing that locks our brain. All of that is what we do. And you know what we do with that? A lot of times we crave those experiences. Our bodies get addicted to those experiences. And we want it over and over. You take an angry person, the angry person will put themselves time and time and time in a situation where they can be angry. A fearful person will put themselves in a position subconsciously, over and over, because there's an addiction that comes, and they're addicted to that feeling. They're addicted to the fear, they're addicted to the pain, they're addicted to the anger. You've seen people like that they want to tell their story over and over, and the more they tell the story, the more you attach to it, the more you create those neural pathways in your brain that says that that's so. If it's rejection, if it's abandonment, whatever it is, the more you think it, the more you talk it over and over, you fire and wire those circuits together, and they're frozen in your brain. And we get stuck there. We get stuck right there. So the more we remember the event, the offense, the more we produce the emotions that's associated with it, and the more we're conditioning ourselves in the past and not moving forward in the future. And I want to share something with you. I was trying to prepare for this, and one of the things that came up was Numbers 33. If you can throw that up there, Numbers 33, and we're going to read 52, 53, and then 55. So that's Numbers 33. And you could do the New King James Version. And starting in verse 1, it says, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them," 51, starting with verse 51. "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you have crossed the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you and destroy all of their engraved stones, destroy their molten images, and demolish all their high places." Verses 53. "You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it, for I have given you the land to possess." Verse 55. "But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain shall be irritants in your eyes, thorns in your side, and they shall harass you in the land where you dwell." Now that word right there in 52 that says, "then you shall drive out," that drive out is yarash. It means to occupy by driving out the previous tenants. And possessing their place. It means to destroy. It means to disinherit. It means to consume, to expel without fail. I'm talking about fear here. I'm talking about anger. Those things that have kept you bound, we're to drive it out. Perfect love drives out fear. Love can conquer it all, guys. And you have all that you need on the inside of you to get rid of it, but it tells you to destroy it, to drive it out. And the inhabitants word there, it means to sit down specifically as a judge. So those things that you have placed on the seat of judgment. Do you understand what I'm saying? That those, like if there's a fear, if something happened in our life, then we see through a filter and we judge it. And we judge things through that filter. So that word there, inhabitants, is yashab, and it means to sit down specifically as a judge. It ambushes. It means to settle, to marry, to make covenant with. We make covenant with these things that have happened in our lives. And we go around like we're the victim, and we're not a victim. And subconsciously, we go around as the victim, and we make covenant with it, and we marry it, and we don't ambush it, we don't get rid of it, we don't drive it out, and it becomes a judge, and it becomes a thing that we see things through. It becomes a thing, the program that runs us. And so that word there where it says that you are, when you go into the land, you're to destroy it. That word is to loose it, to break it off. This is an instruction from God here. That word is abad. It means to loose or to break. And then when it talks about that you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you and destroy all their graven stones. That grave stones there is the word maskish. It means your imagination. It means picture. It means a wish. Guys, I've talked to us about how we frame our world. What we say, that computer, our self-talk, how we frame our world, something happens and those neurons fire together and we see ourselves from that position. It's telling you to destroy those graven images, to destroy the frames that you put up and said, this is who I am. Destroy the boxes that you put yourself in and that you put others in. And it's interesting that it's not only engraved stones, but it's the molded images and demolish their high places. Now, molded image there is the word shalom, or something like that. It means to shade. It means phantom. It means illusion. It means image. So what am I saying? I'm saying that it is time for us to allow Father, when he brings it up, like Karuna had the dream and God showed her what was going on. When we have those situations that happen in our lives and God starts revealing what's really going on, you embrace it. I'm not telling you to go on a witch hunt and try to find all the things that's wrong. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you that when God brings something up for you, then you look at it and go, God, what is this? And what am I to do with this? And there's times that you're going to thank it. Like the fear, the food. Okay, you helped me to self-protect during the time that I was young and immature, and that's what I needed. And so I used you for that time in my life. But you're not mine. And I don't want you. And I'm going to let you go, right? And so you thank it, you release it, and you let it go. And this is what I love this part of it where it says that if you don't drive those things out, that they're going to, those inhabitants, those images, the judges, the imagination, the pictures, and all that stuff, then they're going to be irritants in your eyes. That's a prick. That's a filter. The word there is seek, a sock. And that's what it means. It means a filter. It means a briar. It means a hedge. It means a prick. These things that we don't let go of, they're going to be those filters, and they're going to prick us. And how long are we going to hang on to the pricks? The pricks that keeps us bound. The pricks that holds us in this specific place where we can't see, puts us in a program where we're living from the past. Do you hear what I'm saying? And even the word where it says that they will be irritants in your eyes, that word eye there is ayin, and it means think. It's going to be irritant in the way that you think. The way that you think about a situation. Now your thinking is jacked up. Does that make sense? Because you're holding on to the past. You're holding on to something that happened because it's going to happen. And you're holding on to it. And now you got irritants in your eyes, and you're stuck with these pricks and these thorns in your side, and you're holding on to them and don't understand why you're not able to move forward, or why you're stuck, or why that program keeps going forward. Why that program keeps going forward. Karuna could have been stuck right there, and she would have missed her blessing with Peter. She could have been hurt. She could have been mad at God, mad at others, and stuck. I think I shared with you guys when I was diagnosed with the brain tumor. You know, everything there could have been, God, why did you let this happen to me? Poor me. I could have had that story. But that wasn't my story. Because I began to celebrate. I began to worship. I began to praise in the midst of that. And from that place, things started shifting. So I didn't have the irritants in my eyes. Does that make sense? You guys understand what I'm saying? Because it's going to happen. And I told you guys, I shared this story with you guys, that how I put myself in prison, and there was self-hatred and a whole bunch of other stuff, guilt and shame. And I didn't even realize I was in prison. But everything I did was from that prison. Because everything that I would start, I would imprison myself and say, you're not worthy of it. And that was the filters that I was seeing through. That was the judgment that I had made against myself. And in that prison, that little girl was stuck for 30-something years. And God said, you kept her in prison unrightfully so, unjustly so. So how many times have we put ourselves in a prison, unjustly so, and been stuck there? And now we have a judgment, and we're on the judgment seat, and we're dictating what things are going to do and what they're not, and how it is and how it's not, and it's from an old program. God wants us to get rid of the programs, guys. This is what we were talking about. We've been talking about this. We were talking about fear. Sheila said that the war that we're in right now is fear. And we know what casts that out. it's love. And guys, with the fear, the guilt, the shame, and all of that, what gets cast that out is self-love and the love of God. To see yourself the way he sees you. Does that make sense? You have something?
I'm just thinking about the computer programs. I mean, at work, if my computer's running slow, Control-Alt-Delete, open the task manager. Oh, this one is taking up way too much time. I'm surprised there's 50 of them running. Some of them I can identify that I don't need, but a lot of them I don't know. They need to be there. So there may be a program of fear running back behind, but as long as it's not the one that's open and controlling everything, there's a place for fear. It triggers, you're aware, you check your safety, and that's not what needs to control you, and you move on. It's what programs you're running off of,
Right.
you know? But all of the others are back there in the background. They have a purpose. But sometimes we have to check that and see which ones are taking up all that memory, which ones are the ones that are running us, and check, because sometimes you do need to shut them down, let them reset, you know, for everything to come back into check. So it's very true with our computer. You know, what programs are we running from? Hopefully it's love that's open. I don't know why I have Excel open and it's running like that, but I have 50 other programs.
Right.
But we can shut them down and then the whole thing is going to be off. So you can't just say fear has no place in me. The control of fear has no place. But it does have a purpose.
That's right. And, you know, I read this recently, and you know how we've said here, Sheila said 99 point whatever percent is empty space. Well, I read recently that the mind, you know, the mind actually only less than 2% of your mind is conscious thought. But we have become so addicted to our thoughts.
Right.
We become so addicted to all the things that run consciously in our head, and we think that's us. But just like Trista was saying, it's just part of the program. So part of what meditation does is to help slow down the thought, to break it, to create that space. That space is actually there in your mind. It's less than 2%, so 98% of your mind is open. It's the mind of Christ. It's a vast open space. But we're so attached to the 2% that is just rolling around in here, and we keep feeding it, and that's what, I love how you said there are too many programs going on.
Right.
So how do you do that? You know, subconsciously, until God starts showing you things, you don't know you don't realize they're running. But then when he starts showing you, you realize it becomes conscious. And then one of the things I thought of too, of like the computer, is your browsing history.
Wow.
What happens when you have too much open? You got to delete those cookies.
Yeah.
Clean the cache or whatever it's called. I don't know. I don't remember.
Too, yeah.
IT tells me what to do and I do it. but you gotta dump some of that stuff. And that is our choice.
That's right.
That is our choice.
I like that you even said it was cookies, because that is a cookies in the cache. But because we sometimes want to eat on that.
Yep.
That's good. I like that. It's sweet to me because it's familiar. And so you want to eat on it because it's familiar. But really it's slowing you down. And really it's blocking you up. And really it's sticking your computer. But it tastes good. And I could be right. Sometimes we could be right in our anger. You hear what I'm saying? We could be right about it, and so we hold on to it, and we hold on to it because we're right about it. That's the ego self, guys. That's the ego self. We want to be right. That's the ego self. We have an opinion about it. I had great opportunity this month to deal with a lot of that kind of stuff. And you want to be right about it. I can prove it. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, I can prove it. I can prove while I'm right. It makes sense. Tastes good, that cookie. But it was blocking. And it was opinion. And it was a judgment. And God said, you want to keep that? No. But we have a choice. We have a choice. We could keep it. We could let it go. We could clear it out. And he makes a way for us to clear it out. And that's the beauty and the goodness of God. Woo. All right, baby. I think that was somebody's phone, but that was funny.
Thoughts could be added to that list of our distractions.
Yeah.
Because we're really just trying to avoid the tug. We feel a tug. We feel a stirring. But it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to end up here on the dang mic, but you don't have a word for somebody that changes their lives. That's why I have Graham Cook playing in my bedroom all the time. Because when I wake up, I don't want my thoughts to be the distraction. I want to be reminded right then, you move into it because you're not going to let your thoughts steal your sleep or your health. You're going to move right into it. So you just focus on that. And so I have to have that in my life.
Yeah.
I have to have that be like, nope, I'm only listening to your word. I'm not going to let my thoughts run me. So, it's just finding that list and saying, I won't have the distractions, just moving into it.
Because until we change our thinking, we're going to keep recycling our experiences over and over and over again. And we ought to also watch the triggers. When something triggers you, it's usually because it's something that you see in that person that's like you, that you don't like about you. And ouch, you don't like it. But look at your triggers. What's triggering you?
Don't just avoid that person.
Right. Deal with it so that you can be free. Because it's all about freedom. Because he's for freedom that Christ set us free.
That's right.
It's not that we stay hanging on to those things.
Yeah. And, sometimes when we, and like I said, I wanted to avoid things. So I totally understand that. Or I would feel really upset with someone because, just like Monica said, is triggering that in me. But when you realize, it's a blessing, actually. It shows you, there's something going on there that's corrupt. The program's corrupt.
Yeah.
It needs to be tended to.
It's got a virus.
That's where, there you go. Exactly. But once you see it for what it actually is and are able to have compassion for yourself because you realize, wow, I didn't realize that I saw myself like that. It releases something to that person that is triggering you too. You're able to see like for me, I'd seen my family and all the superficial ways of how I molded it, like Monica said. We're this, we're from India, we're all these things on the outside, external. But as I started seeing this last few weeks, things that have been there, I have so much more compassion for myself and for my family. Like, I feel more connected to them now than ever before. Like, I get it. It's because in that place of learning to detach, from this unhealthy, whatever it is, attachment we've had even to them, I can now actually see them for who they really are. And the beauty of it, the true and the false, all of it. Yeah. And I think that's where, Christ's ultimate sacrifice on the cross, when he was giving his life for all of humanity in that place, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Because in that act, he saw it all. He saw it all the time. He was never, he never lived in denial of who someone was right in front of him. He saw all of them, the true, the false, all of it, and loved them. And in that place, that ultimate act of love, forgive them. He held nothing against them because he could, see it all. And so there is such a beauty in that and such a freedom in it.
Not trying to judge all of your thoughts. My thoughts will get control of me, and I need to fix this and this and this and this. But where God, Jesus, leaves the 99 and goes after the one, I kind of felt like I'd been left. Like I wasn't as bad as that one that he was chasing after, so he was leaving me. But he brought it back to a smaller perspective for me, that he's left my 99 thoughts because they're not important right now. They're not going to hurt me. He's after the one thought right now.
Oh, that's good.
Just the one. We're just going to work on this one thought, and we're going to bring it back in. We're going to get its freedom and chase it and bring it back, and then we'll go after the next thought that's lost.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot smaller perspective for me.
That's good. And that's really cool, Trista, that, you work on what, like we just said, you're not going out on a witch hunt. You work on what God shows you. And what God shows you, then you deal with that. And you embrace it, you look at it, you repent or release, whatever it is that he tells you to do with it. And he'll tell her different than what he might tell me to do with it, And you release it and you forgive and what have you, and then you move forward. I was talking to someone not long ago, and we were just going into this meditation. And in this meditation, we just saw ourselves as light. And the light was just really, really, really bright. And in that light, we saw ourselves as love. And as we were doing that, we just began to pour liquid love through our bodies. And there would be a spot where the liquid love would get stuck. And then we just say, okay, God, why is it stuck in this area? And God would reveal something, and sometimes it would be something from our childhood. And right there, we would deal with it. We'd forgive that little girl, and we'd take that little girl in and love on that little girl. We'd take it, just like you would a child. Because sometimes we judge ourselves so hard that we get stuck in a place. That was what I did. I judged myself. I got stuck. There was pain attached to it. There was guilt. There was shame, and put myself in prison. So what I had to do with that little girl is sit that little girl on my lap, just like you would a little child, because who could want to slap a little child around, right? And take that little girl back into me and love her as a part of who I am. And guys, that brings a lot of freedom. It brings a lot of freedom to us. But when we try to keep it over here and look at it over here, then we judge it constantly. And we never really get healed of it. And that's in the pain, that's the pain of it. That's the pain, that's the struggle, that's the I don't want to deal with it, that's the I don't want to see it. You just stay over there and I'll be over here. And all will be fine. I'm going to take my little toys over here and you stay over there. Right? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Something? Well, we wanted to, do you have anything? No? No? All right. Look at this. This is really early. We're doing pretty good. Okay. So I want to read one other thing to you. When I talked about how until you change your thinking, that you will always recycle your experiences. And God is bigger than our experiences. And he wants us to deal with that. Psalms 139, in the Passion Translation, verses 14 through 16 says, "You formed my innermost being, shaping my delicate inside and my intricate outside. And you wove them all together in my mother's womb. And I thank God for making me so mysteriously complex." Guys, we're mysteriously complex. "Everything you do is marvelously breathtaking. It simply amazes me to think about it. How thoroughly you know me, Lord. You even formed every bone in my body when you created me in the secret place. Carefully, skillfully, you shaped me from nothing to something. And you saw who you created me to be before I became me, before I'd ever seen the light of day. The number of days you planned for me were already recorded in your book." As we are a word from the word, and he watches over his word to perform it. So how can we fail? How can we not be successful? Is there really anything that's impossible when we fully embrace who we are? And so I'm saying to you, just as Sheila had talked about a few weeks ago, that we are awakening. It's not that we're awake completely. We're awakening to what we don't even know. We're awakening, and when God awakens something in us, you grab a hold of it, you let it come in, you see what he wants to say about it, and you release it. That's what you do with it. You grab it, you hold it, and you release it. We're not going to put God in a box. We're going to see it from the place that he sees it, and we're going to walk in what he says for us to walk in. Amen. We're going to get rid of the programs. We're going to clean out our cash and our cookies. You like cash and cookies. I do too.
And something I was thinking of too, just the last couple of days, is we're so tied to our past, our stories, but our stories aren't even who we are.
No.
And so at times, I feel like as God's doing, we're untethering from all the things that have kept us bound. The more we do that, the more we're going to experience just a newness of who we are. It's a discovery. And from time to time, we will go back and visit those stories in order to share with someone else. But it's almost like you're telling someone else's story, because the truth is you are. It's not your story. You aren't the person you were.
Don't lose that thought, Karina.
Yeah.
Not only that, scientists say that 50% of what we remember is not even truth. Because a lot of times we had the experience as a child, and a child will see it different than an adult would. And so the way we remembered it as a child is not necessarily how it happened, but it's what we believed about what happened. And then we're stuck in a lie that's not even true.
That's right.
That was one of my processes that God took me through, was to relive my life and go back with him and see it. So instead of seeing it through the pain and feeling those emotions and everything, I would actually see the other person's pain. Where were they coming from? Why was this situation happening? And so it wasn't personal attack against me. I could see the compassion that that person needed, what they were dealing with at home, what happened to them the night before with their family that they were that person that was attacking towards me. It's just the pain. And so that releases you, and it rewrites your history, because it didn't happen the way you perceived it at that time. Right. And it completely changes your history, which changes your future and your current status. It changes your children, because you're not that person anymore. And so when you relive it, you rewrite who you are.
I love that. Because, if the victim always, if you don't let go of the victimhood, the victim becomes the villain, right? I mean, hurt people, just like what you're saying, Teresa. And so that is just a part of, so when you can let go of the villain in your story, because realize they were just the victim too and weren't conscious of it. So of course that's just that's what they're gonna eventually do, is they'll become the villain. And when you realize that, and from that place of compassion, detached from that story, then you're no longer the victim. And you can really see them for who they are and realize, forgive them, for they really don't know what they're doing.
Well, and real quick, that person hurt you once. You remembering it is you hurting yourself every time. You're now the villain.
That's good.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's so good. So I just wanted to share what the Lord was bringing up to me as both of you guys and Monica were sharing. But basically, the Lord showed me that the Israelites that didn't get to go into the promised land, they didn't go into the promised land because they had doubt and unbelief, and they didn't want to take the land. And because they didn't want to take the land, they stayed in the desert. And so what you guys are talking about is we really are required to go and take the land, guys. The land of milk and honey, right, where there is abundance, there is perfect love. All of these things are available to us, but we have to be willing to take the giants in the land. And unfortunately, like Karuna said, we want to hide from the giants. We want to ignore the giants. We want to medicate the giants. We want to do all of those things. But God has told us that we are bold and we are courageous. So whatever fear you have about going into the land and taking the giants, know that you are bold and you are courageous and you can do it with God. And so the Lord is just showing me that the giants in the land, like I've been apprehensive about it too. Oh my gosh, yes. Because I didn't believe who I was. I was like Gideon, hiding in the, wine press, just being like, who, me? I'm the least of them, right? And God, the angel said, no, you're a mighty warrior, get up. And if you go and you study the original, like Monica was sharing with us, if you study these words, if you get a concordance and you look up these words, each giant represented an emotional aspect. So the Philistines represented being down in the dust. They represented depression. So if you're struggling with depression, you've got to go and take that Philistine. I asked the Lord to explain to me why there was so much murder and violence in the Old Testament, because I didn't see God as vengeful like that and wanted, hungry for blood and all of this. And the Lord revealed to me, he said, these are allegories for the thoughts in your head that have alienated you from me, from accessing who I am that's inside of you. And so essentially, when you see all this murder, where it's like the Lord said, go and murder all these Philistines, right? Don't leave one behind, not one. And what he's really saying is, all of those depressed thoughts that you have, don't leave one behind. Pluck them all out of the land. You cannot let one stand. Because if you let one stand, a little bit of leaven, right, will ruin the whole batch.
All 10 million of those Israelites, your thoughts, can't go into that promised land. Yes. Just those 2 or 3. What was it?
Yeah. We have to,
The land is us. We're the land.
So we have to purify that land. We have to get the giants out of the land. And, what Darren constantly told us is, will you believe the report of the Lord? Will you believe the good report? Or are you going to say, no, I'm going to stay in the desert, in the wilderness. I'm never going to get out of it. I'm never going to take those giants in the land. But we know that we are new creations, and we can have the promised land right here, right now. There's nothing stopping us but being obedient to get the giants, the depression, the anxiety, all of the things I can't remember what each giant stood for, but once we take access to this promised land, that's where the milk and the honey flow. That's where we have oneness with God. That's where we are connected to the mind of Christ, and we can just walk in the Spirit everywhere we go. So I just want to declare that over us right now, that we are mighty warriors, that we are full of boldness and courage, and that we will give grace to ourselves as we take these giants in the land. They will not be there any longer. We will no longer be disobedient. That is the only sin, is to be disobedient and have disbelief that our God is amazing and he's empowered us to walk in victory so we can access this promised land.
Amen. I was telling Monica this a couple days ago. One of the verses that just keeps resonating with me for the last couple of weeks is, I desire truth in the inward parts, or the inmost parts. That's exactly what Alexis was talking about. It's in here. He is truth. Truth is freedom. It's life. It's love, life, and liberty. It's liberty. And it's desiring it in here. And so I keep saying that, and it's like, I know God desires it, but I desire it. That's freedom.
Yeah, total freedom. Yes, we have been seated in heavenly places with him. We have been seated in heavenly places with him. And why are we walking around as mere men? That's the thing. I am too. I mean, when you start thinking about people that, I mean, Jesus walked through walls. There's people that have done great things like that, and others things, and we don't move in that stuff. These are the kind of things that keep us and that hinders us from moving in the fullness of who we are. That's why we're talking about it. And it feels like we're belaboring it, and we're talking about fear and shame again, or guilt and whatever. But those are the things that keep us from walking in the fullness of what we have been created to do, to seat in those heavenly places, to rule and reign from there. You understand what I'm saying? So we don't want that stuff, right? I don't. I want to get rid of it, be fully awakened, and to move into the power and true authority that is ours. Because we can do a little bit of it, but I don't want just a little bit of it. I want the fullness of it. And so that's why we've been talking about fear, and we've been dealing with shame and guilt and all those, the thoughts. Because if you don't think that you can do it, guess what? You won't. Yeah. You've already decided. Yeah. If you don't think you can do it, if you don't think you could whatever, then you won't. And you're not. And that's what we want to deal with. Yeah. Okay? So I'm going to officially end us. Yes, ma'am. Oh, come on. I am going to officially end us, and we're going to go into a meditation. So you don't have to stay for the meditation if you don't like to, but we are going to do a meditation after this. And so you are officially dismissed. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to share some things to just tie all this in together. And it's a real treat that we all can contribute. We can be of no reputation, but then God's reputation comes through us, and we get this revelation. So this combines some things that Alex has said last week, what has been said today, and another person that I respect tremendously, Praying Medic. He talks about healing and authority and power, talks about frequency. It all ties in, and some new stuff that the Lord has shown me. So this has to do with healing, and it's not an ironclad rule about everything, every healing, but what happened to me and what is happening to me. About a month and a half ago, I took a fall, and I had this pain in my arm, and I was supposed to have physical therapy, but I missed that appointment because this move. And so I was having words with the Lord, like, why? Why am I healed? Why am I not healed? What happened? And it was more of an issue of I wasn't ready to listen to him. And sometimes he does share why. And usually with me, I can't speak for anybody else, it has to do with am I ready to really hear? Can I handle the truth, so to speak? And so I was ready yesterday to hear the truth. And when we operate out of the flesh, what happens, and this tied into what Alex said last week, is that this darkness and this pain that comes up, it is to our benefit. What the Lord showed me is that when I operate in the flesh, it sends out a frequency to predators in that domain to attack me. Why? To surface so that I can conquer it in the land, deal with the ites. And so I'd never seen it like that. That was like a new breakthrough for me. So I started walking back with the Lord. He was showing me what was going on with why I had this fall. And at the root of everything, when we get down to the brass tacks of it, it's either we believed a lie or we were deceived. And then we have to apply the light of God's truth to it and say, I see it now, Lord. So, I don't know if the word would be repent, or in other words, turn another way. But I now have freedom. And that is where we've got to deal with the ites in the land. We got to speak freedom to these things that have a root in us, that are manifesting, that are talking to us. And this is how we have to pluck them out. So for the last year or 6 months, I had this dream and aspiration of buying my own home. And I worked really hard saving my money, doing everything I was supposed to be doing. And I was becoming obsessed with it, but I didn't realize it because it's an honorable thing to want to do what I was doing. And what I lost sight of, is that I wasn't in balance. One thing was taking up all my oxygen, and I was trying to help it along for good reasons, but it wasn't in balance. And because I was so addicted to it, I wasn't able to have space. And so it came to a place where, with the market and everything got so ridiculous, I got so priced out of everything that I went into a depression, and where I didn't even show up to work, even though we were, working from home. And my supervisor's like, what the heck is going on? I'm like, I don't care about anything. And I could not filter myself. I was angry because I could not move forward in what I wanted. Was it honorable? Yes. But God was saying, no, not no forever, but no for right now. And then it turns out it was really a wise thing. Go figure. But I was thinking, I was angling still, like, okay, but maybe if I do this, maybe if I do that, and these little things, I could make it happen. So I was operating in the flesh zone. So those predators were like, oh, I see you, attack. And I'm like, what's going on? Where's your favor, God? What is this? And I was trying to apply godly principles into my fleshly world. No, it doesn't work that way. So all of this, if I had slowed down and listened to the Lord, he would have unpacked it for me. But no, I had things to do. So then I am preoccupied with all of this, being worn down, okay? I had provided an inroad. And so while I was walking out of some food establishment, I was worn down. So I misjudged a step. And then I just fell, and this arm took the brunt of it. And there was even a Christian, I think they were Christians, a couple, can we help you? God was even there. He's like, hey, I'm with you on the journey, even though you blew it. But he didn't say that, but it really was. I was operating in the flesh. So as I unpacked it, I'm like, okay, Lord, this is what it was. I was addicted to this thing. And that was me trying to make my own way, like a form of idolatry. When you said no, but you didn't say no forever. And so I could get back to the root of it and say, I see the truth in that. And Lord, your way and not my way. And so when we get to the root of the issue, that's got to start. We got to deal with the ites, because our body will manifest what our soul is saying, but our spirit should be managing our soul, and then our body is going to reflect that. So I got all that unpacked. And so then where power comes in is that is part of knowing what God has done and then speaking, and our body comes into alignment. So I just had a lot to say because it combined everything that was said today, what was said yesterday, and other people. And so I just want to share with you all that this is what's going on in all of our lives, is that we are all geniuses here. We all are geniuses here of this revelation that he is showing us. And so I just want to encourage you, that some of you that don't share either at all like me, is that if God moves you, then please share, because somebody needs to hear it, because they will then they'll be encouraged as well.
Thank you. Okay, you could turn it off now. And you guys are dismissed, and we're gonna go into a meditation if you want to stay.